What's going on, everyone? This is Squids. This episode of Ningen Fushin is honestly probably the best one that they've released so far, even though we're only on episode 3. I think this was almost a perfect slice of life ish esque with character development and leading into the next arc phase that I think this show really needed, because obviously with Tiana and Nick and Zem, we've kind of gotten their characters a little bit, especially like Tiana and Nick. I mean, Zem we did too, but we never got Kuran's actual development. And I think personally, out of all three of them, or all four of them, I think hers is probably the best one out of them. And it doesn't help that the voice actress, Sayaka Kikuchi, probably said that a little wrong, but I love her voice. She does such a great job at expressing the character as well, and it really draws you to that character, and just the way she makes it so fluent and smooth, and even when she's angry in the previous episodes, or like with this episode with the casual vibe of finally starting to get to be a group together and get that kind of bond. It shows so much, and I really appreciate that, and I think she does a fantastic job doing that. But with that being said, let's go through this week's episode, shall we? We start off with Kuran in a dungeon, which she's got critters crawling on her, and she clearly looks very, weak and passed out. Coming to find out that she's like, oh, it's not a dream, and she's holding up that swan pendant, which we ended with last week's episode, which I assumed we'd get her background this episode because of that, but didn't know for sure. And this kind of seals the deal on that one, which leads us pretty much to the intro. And then we go into her actually looking at the pendants at the store that she originally, I'm assuming, got it from. Well, she's usually, she's a dragonoid, so I wouldn't say racism, but maybe a little bit, because she's from out of the city, obviously. While this dealer's like, oh, you like that? It's, 20,000, whatever their currency is. And she's like, oh, I can't, she can't afford that, or, so she puts it back, and so he tries screwing her over and saying that she scratched it. Come to find out, we meet this sus character named Kalios, which we come to find out is actually her party member at the time. And you can already tell he's kind of a piece of shit just from the arrogance on him. Blonde hair, blue eyes, blah, blah, blah. But he sees everything going on. And of course, this guy's trying to con Kran into buying it, because he's like, look, it's Scratchville because of your claws. I'll sell it to you for half price. But Kalios does come in and prove that this man clearly had this one that was defective before, because he actually has Kuran try scratching it, and she can't scratch it without really scratching it. That's the best lightest she could do. So clearly she didn't do it. So he throws it back at him and takes his coin back and the one that was actually the one that wasn't scratched off, and gives it to her and tells him, is either this or I turn you into the authorities, because obviously you're a con man and that's some bullshit. And right after that, we get kind of a flash to Kuran's room that she's in right now, and she's got her armor and she's going to put her heavy armor on, but of course Kalios is like, no, you don't need your heavy armor. We don't need that today. She already seems kind of suspect, if you ask me, especially since we know this is her backstory, so we know something's going to go down. However, obviously she doesn't, because she's living in the moment, but I digress. We go into the, I'd say the labyrinth, because it seems like it's an underground passage, and she splits open this, it almost looks like just a huge ass cockroach, right? Cuts it right in half, and there's Kalios and these 2 spellcasters in this party. We don't really deal with them whatsoever, so I don't think in the future endeavors we're really gonna have to deal with them. Though Kalios, I think we will, obviously, because he's the one we learned their name of. He had the most effect on her, so obviously he's gonna be a bigger part. However, she's doing all the work, hauling all the labor. And of course, Kalios is like, yeah, we'll do all the picking. You just keep doing the damage, because we just do things we're good at. Right? So we get to this next part, and it's she's wrapped. It's okay. So how do I explain this? It's like a huge snake, almost like a cobra, in this jar, and there's like a luminous green acid on top of it, right? And he's like, you go knock it over or get it out of its thing, and we'll take care of it from there. You just gotta distract it. Poor girl. Come to find out, she gets it out of there, and she does have the sorceress back her up for a minute, shooting the fireballs at it to distract it a little bit. And while she's doing that, and they're doing that, it turns green, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's just it trying to, puff out and everything, be a tough guy." And come to find out, Kalios ain't doing shit, and she gets blasted in the face with this green aura, haze, and she's paralyzed, and she falls down completely immobile. And Kalios goes, it's just like a temporary weakness, and you're gonna be whatever. Just abandon her. They take the loot, because apparently this must have been like a creature with some extensive value, because we learned earlier that it is a Class T quest. And it did look like it'd have some type of gem, and you can't really tell what they're carrying. It looks like sticks, honestly, but who knows? And they leave off, and we get that scene, which we see in her flashback in the very first episode, where she's like floating in and out of consciousness, and they're walking away. And like, she is just mad about this, right? Which obviously she should be. We get to her kind of like crawling out with her sword and this like purple cape, because she only has like her like leather armor. Like, she has like nothing at this point. And we get this flashback of this dragon gem that she gets from her tribe. And apparently it's supposed to grow with you like your whole life, which it kind of looks like a dragon egg, and it's really awesome. It's got this like purpley amethysty color to it. And we get to see kind of more of her tribe, which is pretty neat in that sense as well. But we didn't really go too much into it, even though we know that she wants it, because it is a lot of value to her as a person, or as a dragonoid, and just in general. So that's something I think we're going to deal with later on in Kalios into the future endeavors. She stumbles back into town, and of course everybody's surprised that she's alive, because obviously Kalios says she's dead, and he was sending her shit back to her family, which is probably not true. He probably pawned that stuff off, or still has it, which is so sus. So of course poor Karan is in defeat, and I feel for her. Karan doesn't deserve that. She's a good girl. But between all of this so far, she's having a rough time. She does have quite a bit of money, though, but she's in, distress and everything over that, which is totally understandable. And she runs into this guy that passes her through into this food joint. He asks for a pork ginger set. And the guys outside are like, "Oh, yeah, that's Fifth. He's the solo diner." And we come to find out he's actually like the solo partier that is so strong he doesn't need a party, and he just loves food. He loves food, which seems like that's the only thing he does when he's not dungeon crawling, which is legit. That's pretty neat. You gotta have some type of hobby and enjoyment in life. So she kind of starts following him around in all these food joints and listening to what he likes to eat, and she's falling in love with them. And he kind of notices that she's like following him, and like discreetly gives her suggestions every now and then, like, you got to get the lamb skewer, or maybe you need a new cloak because he was all raggedy to go eat in fine establishments. But he seems like he genuinely cares and notices that she is following him, and does acknowledge her for that fact. And they go into this tavern, or not tavern, I guess dining establishment, and they're going to eat, and this drunk guy's looking for the bathroom, and he knocks over Fifth's katana, and before it hits the ground, she stops it with her tail. And he looks mad at first, but obviously he's probably mad at the drunk guy, from what I know. And he's like, I was careless. Thanks for the help. And he recommends her one more meal. And we come to find out that's actually the last time she's seen him, which I'm guessing because she's running out of money after that. That's like right before. Which it does kind of show that, but right before that very first episode where they meet at the bar establishment. All four of them. So that's kind of neat. That just loops right like that. I really like how they laid that out. Then we go to Nick, and he's looking for the exact pendant that he destroyed at Karan's at the store, and he can't find it anywhere. And while he's looking, he's freaking, what's her name? Agate, the idol girl. is in disguise, obviously, because she's an idol and doesn't need people noticing her. And he's like, oh, look, it's the not so sad puppy anymore. And he's about ready to call her name. She's like, don't need to draw attention, obviously. So we go to the park and they're kind of just talking, and she's like, well, what are you doing? And he pretty much narrows it down, I broke this, and she's, a really good partner of mine, and I feel bad about it. And she kind of explains how, like, egotistical and selfish that is, because he didn't even ask her about it, really. And, that kind of makes sense and all, because obviously she doesn't want you to replace it. There's probably a reason for it. Though Agate does give the, comparison to her obviously being kind of selfish about asking him to go to her concert and everything. So, in a sense, him being selfish is kind of a good thing. But he's kind of going around town and runs into Kran, actually, and she's eating this food, and she's just as happy as can be and cheerful and laughtery, and we haven't really seen her like that in this show. And it's kind of a 180, from what we've seen so far, and I really appreciate that. And he goes up and talks to her, and they try food together, and they have a couple giggles, and he kind of talks to her. They go to this like bridge with an overpass, and it's a pretty beautiful shot, actually. The water's a little but pretty good scenery. And she brings more food again, and every time he keeps eating this food, she recommends it's apparently really hot. So there's it looks good though. All anime food looks good, to be honest here. So that is there, and he kind of asks her about the swan pendant, and all in all, she pretty much says, look, you kind of did me a favor, honestly, and let's just move on from it. You got to find your enjoyment in life, and that enjoyment for her is food, which is awesome. And right after that, we go to the bar again, and we see Mr. Zen, and he's eating. He's not eating quite yet. I should say, let's rephrase that. He's getting hit on by chicks, and then right after that, Karan comes in, and a bunch of other adventurers ask her for a drink together, and and Tiana goes in there, and there's this guys calling her cute and ask her on dates. So you can tell this party, even only doing like one quest that we know of, really per se, or two, is getting quite popular in town, at least with the people. And they all go to sit down at the round table again, the same table they've been at before. And, Blondie, Tiana's like, what are you guys doing here? And then, of course, they all laugh after, and it's really funny. Karan ends up, like, taking her cracked swan pendant and, like, throws it in the air and swallows it. And Nick's like, what the hell? And then it turns out she doesn't have it in her hand, but it's on her tail. And she flings it, like, at him. But it disappears. It's not even there. And he like opens his mouth to catch it. It's really funny. But I don't know what the exact. I couldn't keep track of it. She probably just chucked it somewhere. But while he's doing that, the squirrel receptionist comes up, and she goes up to the survivor party and goes, actually I have a quest for you guys, which is gonna set up the next season, or not season, oh my gosh, the next arc or episode at least. And that requires them they're apparently going to look for the Holy Sword, the Sword of Bonds, in this dungeon, which apparently she has that much faith in them, because now they're Class F adventurers instead of E, so they went up a rank at least. And then, of course, the narrator tells us about everything, and this could be a turning point for their fate. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of the episode. And honestly, like I said, it was solid. They did a really fantastic job with it, and I'm almost curious if we're going to run into Fifth or Kalios or somebody in this dungeon that's gonna freaking be a push for the party, because obviously the only other person in this town would be Nick that would run into like past experiences. So it's either gonna be one of those two, but the way they're setting it up, I think we're gonna run into Fifth because he's been gone for a while, but it's really hard to say, so who knows. But yeah, this was a really good episode, and I am really excited to keep watching this, because it's really turning out to be amazing, and I'm very happy about that. So yeah, with that being said, we'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.